What's up guys, my name is Ace, and we are 1 week into Black Ops 7, and today we got a fairly big balancing patch, not only for weapon balancing, but also balancing to aim assist and various pieces of equipment and field upgrades. And in today's video, in my usual style, we're going to be diving very deep into this to show you guys exactly what changed and what things look like before versus after. And let's just start it off with that aim assist change. And with this, they reduced the minimum rotational aim assist penalty from 35% compared to like Black Ops 6, for instance. That's what the penalty used to be. They've reduced that down to 25%. So essentially, they've slightly buffed the rotational aim assist with no right stick input present. And while it's still very noticeably weaker than what we've been used to in recent years of Call of Duty and the beta build of the game as well, it is going to be that little bit more powerful than it has been since the launch of the game. In fact, they didn't even really meet in the middle when it comes to this. They're still leaning more in the direction of the new, weaker style of aim assist. So for everyone that was panicking and freaking out that they were reverting aim assist back to like the pre-patch values, no, they haven't even gone halfway back in that direction. It's still definitely on the weaker side compared to what we're used to in Call of Duty. Next, let's get into the weapon balancing, and the first big change here is across the board for assault rifles. They've increased the amount of flinch you receive when you have an assault rifle in your hands from 0.15 newtons up to 0.18 newtons. Realistically speaking, you'll probably never actually notice this difference in game. This is a very minor difference when it comes to flinch. Then let's get into some individual weapon changes here, and we're going to start it off with the M15. And with this, they did a few things. They slightly reduced all of our damage values across the board, and while this only changed the number of shots to kill in our second damage range from 5 to 6, they also buffed our maximum damage range to at least half compensate for that. So overall, our 5-shot kill potential to the body was definitely decreased, but not by a large margin. And then on top of that, with these slight damage reductions, we now require a different number of headshots. So up close, instead of just 2 headshots mixed in to get a 4-shot kill, now we need to mix 3 headshots in with a body shot to get that 4-shot kill. So it's less effective with headshots, and its 5-shot kill range has been reduced. And then on top of that, they nerfed all of the handling and mobility stats pretty much across the board here. And that's a pretty common trend we'll be seeing with many of the assault rifles. Now on top of that, we did see a nerf to recoil on the M15. And while this is absolutely still quite an accurate gun in this game, we can see there is noticeably more recoil post-patch compared to pre-patch. So you may have to adjust to that a little bit, but again, this is still a very accurate gun. Next, let's get into the AK-27. And this one saw a few damage nerfs, especially to our minimum damage range. So at long ranges, it's now going to be a 6-shot kill to the body rather than a 5-shot kill. However, they also buffed our second damage range by quite a bit, actually. They buffed it up to pretty much 51 meters. So this was essentially just a nerf at really long ranges. And honestly, in this game, it's kind of hard to find a range beyond that anyway. So as long as you're keeping yourself where this gun really excels, which is closer ranges, you shouldn't really notice any difference in its actual power potential. However, just like with the M15, we also saw nerfs essentially across the board to our handling and mobility stats. And we also saw a nerf to recoil on this. And this one is fairly noticeable. I mean, it might not look like a big difference, but that is a fairly big difference, especially with those initial shots fired. They are going to be climbing quite noticeably faster, and those are the most important shots that we're firing with this gun as well. So it is going to require a little bit more active control or more recoil attachments in order to get that under control. Now after that, we have the MXR-17, and with this, we only saw nerfs to our slide to fire time, as well as our aim down sight movement speed, and these were very slight nerfs. There were no damage or range or recoil adjustments to this one. And then after that, we have the X9 Maverick, which is that burst assault rifle. And with this, they reduced our damage values across the board, but then they also increased our neck, upper torso, and upper arm multiplier that essentially brings those values back to where they were pre-patch, but only to those zones. So it just requires a bit more precision now. And what this means is in the maximum damage range, for instance, where we have the potential to get a 1-burst kill or a 3-shot kill, previously we would get that 1 burst no matter where the bullet hit in the body, whereas now we have to be landing at least one of our bullets to the head, neck, upper torso, or upper arms, which realistically, you're most likely going to be doing that anyway. But if you are aiming too low and you don't happen to mix one of those shots in there, it's now going to be a 4-shot kill, not a 3-shot kill. And then again, it is worth mentioning, we saw some handling and mobility nerfs to this one as well. And then finally, for the assault rifle category, the DS-20 Mirage saw a very slight nerf to its sprint out time, its tactical sprint out time if you're using the TAC Sprinter perk, and then finally its aim walking movement speed, just like with the MXR-17. And there we go, that's it for the assault rifles. The Peacekeeper was untouched with this, outside of that small flinch nerf that applied to all of them. Now let's get into the SMG categories, and I initially was going to be sharing the full SMG comparison today. That obviously is getting pushed back. I still plan on providing that for you guys even after this update, but thankfully this means I had all the testing done for this and all the graphics ready to go. So let's dive in with the flinch adjustment to this. Unlike with the assault rifles, they reduced the flinch that you receive when using SMGs from 0.17 newtons down to 0.12 newtons. Now again, with these values being as small as they are, you're generally not really going to notice flinch all that much anyway with these guns, but it is still a buff that they received across the board. Then with the Ryden 45K, we saw a bit of a buff to our 7-shot kill range, so it is going to be a little bit more effective in those mid-range situations. On top of that, they slightly improved our aim down sight speed, and they also buffed a lot of the recoil attachments essentially across the board for all of the SMGs. I'm not going to go through each individual change here, but just know essentially anytime you use a recoil attachment on an SMG now, it's going to be more effective than it was pre-patch. And then finally for the Ryden, they did mention they slightly buffed recoil when it comes to gun kick deviation as well as view kick strength. But really, looking at it pre-patch versus post-patch, I'm not seeing that much of a difference here. There's slightly less vertical magnitude, but that just scrunched the recoil plot down a little bit, which almost makes it look like there's more horizontal recoil, even though there technically isn't. Also, I guess you could argue with the initial shots fired, they're a little more accurate on this. But again, this wasn't a major adjustment by any means. Then after that, for the RK9, we saw a very, very slight buff to our 5-shot kill range. This is something you'll probably never actually notice though. I don't even know why they bothered with such a small buff here, but just know it's very slightly buffed with its 5-shot kill range. And then again, like I said, the recoil attachments were also buffed, but in this case, the base recoil wasn't touched on the RK9. After that, we've got the Razor 9mm, and this one saw a buff to its 8-shot kill range. So again, it looks like they're really targeting those mid-ranges, which is nice to see. And then again, recoil attachments got improved on this. And then on top of that, we did see some improvements to our base recoil. And looking at it pre-patch versus post-patch, if you're just looking at the general shape and magnitude of the recoil, it looks very similar. However, if you look at the details, you can see there's definitely less gun kick there. There's less of that side-to-side bounce or deviation from that recoil path. And this is actually going to help by a noticeable amount with the Razor. This was one of my complaints with this gun, is it had way too much gun kick in my opinion. Now that has been reduced by a noticeable amount. Then after that, for the Dravic, this one saw a buff to its 6-shot kill potential. And honestly, I don't think this gun needed any buffs. This was the one SMG that I felt was in a good place, but it is going to be just a little bit more powerful there in that mid-range. It is worth noting with this one, this is the one exception where none of its recoil attachments got buffed, unlike with all of the other SMGs. And that's for a good reason. The Dravic is a very accurate gun. After that, we have the Carbon 57, and the same trend continues here. Our 7-shot kill range was buffed a little bit, so slightly better at mid-ranges, and our recoil attachments got buffed, and then our base recoil also saw a little bit of a buff with the Carbon 57. And with this one, we can see it's not cutting nearly as hard horizontally as it was pre-patch. Pre-patch had a very strong S shape to it, and while there is still that general shape, it's less pronounced post-patch. And then finally for SMGs, we have the MPC-25. This one saw a bit of a buff to its 6-shot kill range to help at mid-ranges. It also saw some adjustments to its slide to fire, dive to fire, and aim down sight times. And we saw a bit of a recoil improvement, but I mean, this gun still has a ton of recoil. It climbs like crazy, pre-patch and post-patch. We can see it does climb a little bit less now after the update, but not by a massive amount. And there we go, that wraps it up for all of the SMG changes. Now let's get into Marksman rifles. And with these, unfortunately, I didn't get to any pre-patch graphics or anything, so I don't have any fancy graphics to share for you guys. But with the Warden 308, with this update, it's losing its one-shot potential to the upper arms. However, we will still be able to one-shot to the upper torso. So it will be less forgiving with that one-shot kill. They've also nerfed all of our handling and mobility stats, and increased the amount of flinch you receive when using this. And then after that one, we have the M34 Nova line, and with this one, they just nerfed all of the handling and mobility stats, and they also increase the amount of flinch you receive when holding this gun. Now, let's get into the LMG category, and for the Mark 7.8, they slightly improved our aim down sight speed from 460 milliseconds down to 440, so it handles a little bit better, and they buffed the heat shield belt-fed attachment on this, primarily so you can fire longer before overheating, and it will also cool down faster. And then for the other LMG, the XM325, they also buffed the aim down sight speed, but just a little bit on this one from 400 milliseconds down to 390. Now finally, in the pistol category, they made some adjustments to the Jaeger 45's Vital Ace barrel. With this, they drastically reduced your rate of fire potential while also drastically improving our damage potential to the body. And while they reduced our headshot multiplier, we still have a one-shot headshot potential like we did pre-patch. So it's still going to be very rewarding for the headshots, but it's also going to hit really hard to the body now with a 2-shot kill potential rather than a 4-shot kill potential to the body. But again, keep in mind the rate of fire has also been reduced drastically on this, so that will be limiting that new power that it gained. And then finally, we have the Velux 5.7. And with this one, they essentially just brought it from a 3-shot kill up close down to a 4-shot kill, unless you're hitting a headshot. And there we go. That wraps it up for all of the weapon balancing that took place with this update, but we're not finished there. The next thing they adjusted is they increased the viewable minimap area by an additional 10% on top of the previous 15% improvement we saw throughout the beta. Then for field upgrades, they nerfed the drone pod. The first thing they did is they increased the charge time from 2.5 minutes up to 3 minutes, so you're not going to be seeing them quite as often. They also reduced the active duration of each of the drones from 10 seconds down to 8 seconds. And they reduced the amount of damage it deals from 60 damage down to 50 damage. As for score streaks, with the hand cannon, if you're using it in akimbo, they increase the amount of ammo that you get from 5 to 7 rounds per gun. And they also reduced hipfire spread by 44%. And then on top of that, they reduced the amount of ammo for the hand cannon extended mag overclock from 12 down to 10 rounds. And then the only other score streak adjustment here was to the LDBR. They increased the missile count for the second strike overclock from 9 to 13 missiles per target. Next, when it comes to spawns, they only made some free-for-all adjustments here, and they just adjusted the spawn influencer size for all maps to address bad spawn issues. And that's it when it comes to spawn adjustments for this update, but they have mentioned they are working on spawn tuning for Team Deathmatch and Hardpoint as well, and I believe we're expecting to see that at the latest with the Season 1 update. And then let's talk a little bit about challenges. They made a couple adjustments here. The first one is for the camo challenge that previously required you to kill enemies that were affected by your tactical equipment. They've changed that to kill enemies affected by your tactical or non-lethal score streak. So that will also count, I believe, if you have a UAV or counter UAV in the air. And then on top of that, for challenges, they just fixed an issue where the popcorn medal wasn't being awarded when getting 2 or more kills with the needle drone or Semtex. And then finally, the last thing in this update is just various crash and stability updates. And there we go. That's finally going to wrap it up for everything that changed multiplayer-wise for Black Ops 7. And overall, I'm very impressed with an update of this magnitude just 1 week into the game. Lots of excellent balancing adjustments here. I'm looking forward to really checking out the SMGs and seeing how they feel post-patch compared to pre-patch, because I did feel like they were lacking, especially when it comes to recoil and in the mid-range department. And those are the 2 primary areas they targeted with these adjustments. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about all of these changes in those comments down below. Are you guys generally happy with what you're seeing here, or maybe not so much? If you enjoyed this video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.